You know, they say when the pig is scared and you kill the pig, you can taste it in the meat. I think when the chef is stressed, you taste it in the food. It doesn't have, so you have to cook with love. You have to have, as much as some people, you know, clients can get on your nerves and make you crazy, you have to have a love for that besides the self-respect.
This episode is brought to you by FultonFishMarket.com, the most trusted name in seafood. FultonFishMarket.com is the e-commerce provider for New York's iconic Fulton Fish Market, the largest seafood market in the Western Hemisphere, trusted by top chefs for over 200 years. Fulton Fish Market provides a range of world-class seafood options. FultonFishMarket.com can help you serve a wide range of customers, whether you serve high-profile individuals or just strive for culinary excellence. They deliver directly to your doorstep in all 48 contiguous states, providing a comprehensive selection of the finest seafood, from wild fish to caviar and shellfish. When it comes to seafood, FultonFishMarket.com is our go-to destination and the name we trust. Let's celebrate those who support us and dive into this episode of the Private Chef podcast with a taste of excellence and freshness. Visit www.fultonfishmarket.com to get 15% off your first order. Use code PrivateChef at checkout. Welcome to the Private Chef podcast, serving the 1%. I'm your host, Hennche. And on our show, we speak to the best chefs, how they honed in on their skills to excel in the industry, and what it takes to work as a private chef for some of the most exclusive clients in the world. Welcome back to the Private Chef podcast. I'm your host, Hennche. In today's episode, we have the incredible Chef Margot Olshan. She's a seasoned private chef and culinary instructor with quite a unique story. From baking delicious pastry to grazing television screens, Chef Margot's journey has been nothing short of extraordinary. She's had the honor of serving prestigious clients and sharing her culinary expertise at the culinary academies, all fueled by her deep love for food and hospitality. Join us as we dive into her journey, from the heart of New York City to her culinary adventures in high net worth households. Welcome to the show, Margot.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, of course. So one of my favorite opening questions is, where did your love for cooking and food come from?
Travel has been my muse, really. And I kind of always had an interest in the kitchen, but seeing new things and trying new foods really was kind of the catalyst for getting into a kitchen. I always say my first trip to Sicily, here I am, this Jewish girl from New York, and I felt like I was home. This kind of capers, lemons, sardines, the fresh fish. It was all really who I was as a cook. So that really inspired me. And then I decided to go to culinary school where, you know, I started taking the track to get into commercial kitchens. I decided that for some insane reason, that was something that I wanted to do. I knew it was tough. I wasn't a kid. I was 35 when I went, but I just had a drive. And I think that's what happens with most professional cooks, is they have this drive. They want to please people and they want to be creative and share what they make. So that's what happened to me.
How did that feel for you when you went full cycle from going to culinary school to becoming culinary instructor at the same school?
Well, I was a culinary instructor before that. My first experience being a culinary instructor was at a place called Star Career Academy of New York. And I found the place by, one day I was walking along and I was interviewing different places. I was living in Connecticut and I was going to move to the city. And I see a bunch of people standing around in front of this building on 14th Street. And I interviewed there and, started teaching there. I loved it and I loved the people I worked with. And later on, I became the chairperson of the department, and admissions would walk people around and I'd say, look, go look at all the other schools. Look at the pretty schools. We're not as fancy. Our tuition is 17 grand. Theirs is 50. And it really comes down to having good teachers. You know, the equipment doesn't matter. Yep. Knife skills are knife skills. Technique is technique. You don't have to be in the state of the art. You can learn that anywhere, but you need good teachers. So that was a pretty good sales pitch, and it did work, except some people were just put off by it. But sadly, in 2016, they went out of business. They were a for-profit school, and they shut their doors. They called us into a meeting, and they said, "This is it. We're done. Get your things." And it was really sad, really, really sad. I felt terrible for all these students that I had. I was going to take them to the Board of Health the next day to take their certification, food safety. So I did end up at the other school, ICE. And when I went, it was very small. It was called Peter Kump's New Cooking School. And it was still in this little, like a brownstone on the Upper East Side. And it was very expensive at the time. It's changed quite a bit. And for me, it was, opening a new door. I had just split with my husband, and I had 2 little kids living in Connecticut, and I'd come to school at night, and I was just a cook. All my problems were kind of behind me when I was there learning and soaking everything up as a sponge. And cooking really became that for me as a way to, you have to focus. When you're cooking, this, you have to be focused on what you're doing. If you're distracted, pardon me, but you fuck up. You don't want to do that. You want to be able to, get it right. So it was very therapeutic in that way. So many years later, after the school had closed, I did get a job at ICE. I was the assistant dean of students. But ultimately, I was doing a lot more paperwork than being in the kitchen kind of work. I did teach as well, but I'll be honest, I just really hated my job. I looked down a list of things that I had to do. I said, okay, I'm going to list, because my job description got bigger and bigger and bigger, but my check did not get bigger and bigger. And I looked at everything on there, and I hated all my responsibilities because they were very much behind a desk and doing computer things that I don't know how to do. I'm a cook, and I'm good with people, and I'm a good teacher, but I'm not a spreadsheet kind of gal. I also don't like politics and any of that. So I don't like corporate where you have to write down your goals every year, and you're getting reviews and all that kind of stuff. So I made a decision that I was just going to get out, and I took a chance. I decided that I would go back into private chef work because I had done it many years before, because really my goal was to make money, to just be in the kitchen, do what I do, and maybe teach too, because I really do love to teach. So I took the chance before I even had secured a client. That was how much I really wanted to move on. And I decided I would make a website. I got pictures taken. I started organizing myself as far as I'll advertise. And, there are newsletters for all these fancy neighborhoods and Tribeca and this and that. And I was going to place little ads. But actually the job board at ICE, when you're an alum, they have a job board. And so I actually got my new job through the job board at ICE. People also advertise for private chefs there, and I responded to one. I met the principal and did a tasting and got the job. And the beauty of it was 3 days a week. So, I mean, working 3 days a week, doing what I do, and having time to have a life was fabulous. It was great for me. And the people are very nice. They've got young kids. It gets a little hectic at times, but I'm very calm in the kitchen, and I can handle it. You throw me all kinds of things and I can do it. 2 extra kids are coming for lunch. Got it. So-and-so is coming for lunch, but they are allergic to blah, blah, blah. I got it. So, that was great. Then COVID came around. Right. And, I was actually very lucky because the school closed, restaurants closed. As you know, lots of people in our industry were out of jobs. And I still had a job. And I was still, doing just fine. And my client moved out to their house in the Hamptons during that time. So I would just go out there. We were sort of our own little bubble. And full disclosure, I lost both of my parents to COVID in early April.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, 4 days apart. So we really were hit with such a tragedy. And once again, the most therapeutic thing I could do was get behind the stove and cook. Because again, you don't focus on what you're just focusing on what you're doing. And so for those, 10 hours or whatever, I'm in the kitchen. I didn't think about it. And then as soon as, I walk out of there, like, this the sadness would just overwhelm me. I'd remember, but thank God for that job, really, in so many ways, not only because I could support myself, but because it helped take me out of my head during just a terrible time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think especially a time where many people got caught up in their head.
Mm-hmm. So for me, it's really worked because I wanted to have freedom in my life. Because that year, not only did I become an orphan, but I became a grandma too. So talk about the circle of life. And I can have time to spend with my granddaughter who lives here in Brooklyn, just like me. And that's a beautiful thing. But private chef, as you know, is a very specific kind of work. It's different than, so many other things. You're not in a commercial kitchen. To me, it's really about service and hospitality. Would you agree? I think.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think if you go into the private chef world, you have to have a service heart. Like otherwise, you won't appreciate what you're doing. You won't love it, and you won't have longevity.
Yeah, that's right. I see ads for Michelin star chef, blah, 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 high end, this and that. And that's not me. I always say the only time I use a tweezer is just to pluck my eyebrows. I don't do, precious little thing, plate and a little smear of this. I can make beautiful food. In fact, I love to make beautiful food. I love colors. I get excited if I see edible flowers that I can pick in the garden and put on there. And that's a real joy for me. But I'd make real food people will eat that's delicious and not precious like that. My strength is I can do that and really give hospitality. Take care of people. I want people to feel good. When I had a restaurant, I would tell the staff that never let somebody leave unhappy. Always got to find a way. Danny Meyer is my hospitality hero. I got to meet him actually at one of our graduations at ICE. And don't let them leave. You can always, there's so many ways to save somebody, a client, a customer. Give them a cup of coffee, give them a glass of wine, find out a way that's going to make it, turn it around. If, something messed up, first of all, own your mistakes. I always believe you got to own your mistakes because we all make them. Don't lie. If you forgot to put their order in something, there are ways to explain it and then to give something so that you can make them happy in one way or another. And I carry that through with me today. The best feeling is when I leave, because right now they're still in the Hamptons. Tomorrow's my last few days out there. And I love the feeling of they're outside, they're eating, they're happy, they're loving it. The little kids come in, everybody loves it. And the kitchen's clean. My work is done. And I go, I'm out. And that's a great feeling. And then I'm off for a few days. So
how do you turn around something in a private household? Where the relationship is slightly different and, it's not as easy as serving them their own wine on the house.
Right. Well, first of all, you have to have chemistry with your clients. There has to be a good fit. I have done tastings when I was up for certain jobs or actually had jobs that didn't last long because the chemistry just wasn't there. So you have to have this sort of foundation of understanding them. Hopefully they understand you, but if you get them and everybody tends to be a little eccentric and have their odds and, strange ways, but they have to be ones that you can live with and you can work with. So if I understand what the issue is, there are ways I'll come around and I'll say, well, how about if I make this, if somebody doesn't like something, you know what? I have some chicken here. I'm going to fix that for you. And I try to find a way that's going to make that particular person happy. Like one of the things is children, because they, 1 week pasta tastes like poop, I'm told. And then another week they love pasta. So, you have to keeping up with it isn't always so easy, but you got to find a way. Have that chemistry, first of all. And you have to, I had this theory years ago, because I used to sometimes work in Martha Stewart's home because I'd worked for her for a number of years. And sometimes I worked up at her home in Maine, her spectacular home in Maine, fly up on the plane with them. And then we I would work my behind off. People would say, "Oh, you got to go to Maine with Martha." Yeah, I'm in the kitchen. Just like they say, "Oh, you're in the Hamptons this summer." Yeah, I'm in the kitchen.
We know that.
I don't think,
we're in those nice places, and people think we're vacationing alongside our principals, and I'm like, no, not quite exactly.
Nope. Nope, not at all. Not at all. So worked my behind off that weekend, came back, and it was good. Everything was good. And I thought to myself, you have to be a little bit in love with your client sometimes, the whole cooking with love, because I really do think it's like, they say when the pig is scared and you kill the pig, you can taste it in the meat. I think when the chef is stressed, you taste it in the food. It doesn't have, so you have to cook with love. You have to have, as much as some people, clients can get on your nerves and make you crazy. You have to have a love for that. Besides the self-respect, like I'm determined to do my best, and I'm not in a corporate situation anymore where I'm up against other people and the dog eat dog thing. It's just doing my best. And if I don't do my best, I walk away a little unhappy, and I try to think about how I can make it better next time. But I like that winning moment when,
Let me ask you one question about your winning moment here. Is it more important for you to give your best and that you walked out the kitchen knowing you gave your best, or is it equally important that the client understands you gave your best and that you basically get their appreciation?
Well, it's always great when you get that appreciation. I have a new client that I just started with, in addition to my regular one. And I just kept getting texts from her. "Oh, we love this, and the kids love that. And we just pulled out the enchiladas last night and they were so great." And I love that. First of all, important to get feedback, but that, it makes me more secure about, okay, I understand them and I'm hitting the targets that I need to be hitting. So in answer to your question, it's really both. What stinks is when you do think you do your best and the client is unhappy. Sometimes there's a misunderstanding, and that's when I do have to try to catch it. And that's when you do have to own it. "Oh, I really didn't understand that. I'm so sorry. It won't happen again."
But there are some clients that give you maybe one of those and then you're out, especially in the earlier stage. I think that's a thing that in the private space, people don't give you many shots. And if you don't wow them in the initial stage and you're able to keep that up for a sustained period of time, then I think the families are very likely to move on and try to find a different chef.
Yeah, that's right. And then that's probably not the right person for me, because there is a learning curve. And most people know that. And if you're a good chef, you're going to learn quickly too. And you're going to take notes and you're going to remember what worked, what didn't work, try to communicate with them. To me, that's one of the biggest issues. If there's no communication, I need to know if you liked it or if you didn't like it, and really get a feeling for what the client wants so I can make them happy. It's hard to work in a vacuum, but there's that learning curve, and that can be a little bumpy.
Yeah, but don't you sometimes feel that we're supposed to be mind readers?
Yeah, and I'm not. I mean, I have some talents, but that is not one of them. I try to read the room. One of my things is also I try to do little surprises. If I have some extra time, I'll make a really nice agua fresco with lemongrass and ginger or something. And, I'm serving a bunch of ladies lunch and they love it. Trying to put little surprises and try new things. I say it's kind of like your love life. Sometimes you got to spice it up and throw something new in there. And so I really do try to do that. I don't want them to be bored, although people also tend to like a lot of the same things once they find it, especially kids. You repeat it, but I want to keep it keep them on their toes a little bit and try new things and extra little things. So, but that comes down to the chemistry again.
So how was your chemistry with Martha Stewart? Did you find it especially challenging to cook for someone like her?
Well, I have a long history with Martha. I knew Martha way years ago. My father, knew her, and they were friendly when she was a stockbroker, and they were all on the commuter trains to Westport. And he used her for some business events because she was just starting to cater, and she catered my wedding. My wedding is in the First Weddings book, so we have, we have an old, we go back. So, ironically, what happened is I ended up at her TV studio. I was working at a place called the Elms Restaurant and Tavern, and one of my coworkers started working with her, and he lured me over there. And I stayed there for 6 years. I worked in the commissary. So what I did was we had a small kitchen, and we served all the staff and all the crew and VIPs and all that. And it was a great job for a single mother with 2 little kids. 15 minutes from my home, not restaurant hours. Money was okay, all the benefits. And it was stimulating because there were so many new things and new people. It wasn't like some corporate jobs where I really would have felt like I was in a rut. So Martha, she knew me. We used to have these meetings around this area they called the Bullpen. This was at their TV studio in Westport. Beautiful facility. And so we were still pretty small then, and everybody would gather around and you would introduce new people. And the guy I was working with introduced me to everybody. And Martha says, yes, I've known Margot for years. She catered her wedding. It was beautiful. She came down the stairway with her father. She's one of my failures because she's divorced now. I thought it was funny. Some people were like, can you believe she said that? You know what? That's Martha. She tells it like it is. And in that way, I really appreciate her because Martha will never blow smoke up your skirt. If you get a compliment from Martha, that's the real thing. That's why, like I was talking about that weekend where I came home and she was really happy. I was happy because she's not going to fake it to make you feel better. She's brilliant. People would always say, is she a bitch? And I would say, you tell me about anybody who's self-made like that, who makes that much of a success. They're tough. You don't say that about a man. You don't say that about Ron Perlman. She's very tough, very smart, and loves to learn and gives people opportunities. I had great opportunities. She put me on television. I was on this series, Everyday Food, for 5 seasons or 6 seasons. She promoted my cafe, did a segment there. So she was good to me. Did I have my moments where, those sort of Martha things happen? Yeah, but that's
I love
okay.
the way you say that because I feel like if we know somebody for long enough, there are those, call it their first name moments, and it's
yes.
like, yeah, it's just part of the human experience almost. And the longer you know somebody, the more obvious it will get. And you just also know, oh, something is coming here. And with some experience, we know how to handle it better. And I'm including myself in that, my friends and my people close to me, they know when I have my moments.
Yep, that's right. But the experience was so valuable, really. And it was just a great place to be. And that's actually what got me into private chef work. Because Martha knew the Levinsons, Barry Levinson, the director. They lived in Redding, Connecticut. And Martha knew of them, and their daughter was getting married. And they had a caterer, but they wanted somebody to cater the breakfast the day after. So my former partner and myself, along with some other people, did that breakfast. And they really liked us, and they started using us more sort of like a small catering group. And then he did private chef work for them a while. And then he left, and they wanted me. And so I actually lost my job at Martha Stewart when Martha went away. They closed the Westport facility because many people's job could transfer to New York, but my job didn't. That was not a job that could be done in New York, the commissary shift. They don't have a commissary in the New York offices. So Martha went to camp, and I lost my job. And the Levinsons called me up right away, and they wanted me. And they are lovely people. So, that was a blessing as far as a private chef client. And I worked with them on and off for 11 years. Sometimes, like after I had my restaurant, and then we found they needed somebody, I was around, I worked for them. And, great feeling of trust. Got to know their family. Their son is very successful now. He's got this show, Euphoria, and I was around when he was a kid with his struggles, and he's lovely. The whole family, it really is lovely. And that was a great experience. So, but that's not really what I wanted to do at the time. I really wanted to have a restaurant, and I really wanted to do all that stuff. And I did, and been there, done it, and I think that's another selling point of myself as a chef is that, for a private home is I'm not somebody who's going to be there for 6 months until I can get a restaurant, until I want to, I have no ambition anymore. This is one of the great things of where I am in my career. One day I thought, I have no ambition, I don't care about promotions and this and that and titles. You know what? I just want to make some money, have a pleasant life and, enjoy, especially after something like COVID and loss and the horror show that it was here in New York. The lens in your life really kind of gets more into focus and you realize what's really important. So yeah, that's been my evolution.
I feel that I'm spending the days sitting next to my dad right now as he's receiving chemotherapy. So that really hits home for me. Where we have all these ideas of career and fancy this and that and working. And then those life shifting learning lessons where you're like,
right.
How much does this really matter at the end of my lifetime compared to maybe
that's right.
how much we value those rare moments that we can share with our family.
Right. That's right. I feel badly about when I was in the restaurant business because of how much time away from my kids it took. My daughter's whole senior year of high school, I was never there. I missed that whole last year with her. My son really felt abandoned, I think when I was in my second business. So, no more. I want to be my mother was such a great grandmother with my kids. I really want to honor that and be like that. And all of my family. That's just really what's so important to me. I don't have regrets. I have a little bit of regret, like I was just saying about missing that time with my kids, but I'm really glad I did have the career I had. I did so many of the things I wanted to and things that I never even dreamed of. But now I'm good. It is a little challenging sometimes when your client is finding certain things very important, that when you're looking at things like your father having chemo or experiencing deaths in your family, it's like, is it really so important that we have, whatever the eccentricity might be, but that's part of the job. So you have to go out and source whatever it is they want or whatever those needs are that you're finding might be a little frivolous at the moment. That's your job, and that's what you do. And these people pay you. And my opinion is not important at the time of whether it's really something of value or not. Let's just get the job done and make them happy.
Yes and no, but at the same time, I remember in those moments, when the news first hit about my dad's health and how we progressed, kind of getting new updates from the doctor and how serious it is. Some of those requests just seemed so unimportant, and I had a really hard time reminding myself to act professionally and just be like, yes, of course I will make my day twice as stressful by running out for that additional flavor of ice cream that you didn't tell me the first time you wanted me to get stuff from the shops,
Yeah, exactly. It's a little hard. Yeah. Well, that's when you get in your car and just say, well, I'm not going to say it, but you have your little conversation with yourself and, you deal with it. It is very hard sometimes because my client was very understanding when all that happened with my parents, but they weren't going through it like I still was. That was a long process of grieving for me. So, but again, that was my escape, is to go out there and focus on, well, we have to get the granola bars and we have to get the whatever. And I'm just grateful I had that job. I'm grateful they were there. And I can't believe that I'm going into my 4th year with this particular client,
So basically having done most things in the culinary world, you've been an instructor, you've been on television, you've had your own restaurant, you've done catering. Mm-hmm. If you were to rank it, where is the private chef gig? Over also taking your entire lifespan in the culinary world into account, not just now where it feels like the best suitable fit?
Honestly, my favorite thing I did was teaching at Star Academy and being the chairperson there when I did get the promotion, because they let me do my thing there. Not everything. There was management and constrictions and all, but amongst my group, I was able to be creative in how we could make school interesting for them, help them find jobs, make connections for them. As somebody who had a restaurant, there were so many bad labor is the worst part. It's like, I want to teach them how to be professionals. And I got to tell you how many people, I heard from later who I taught who said, you were right, chef. And, and thank you. And their success is my success. I always said to them.
Sorry for the interruption, but we gotta share the news with you. Nothing fishy from FultonFishMarket.com. They're delivering world-class seafood from New York City's legendary Fulton Fish Market straight to your door. Their fishmongers have helped countless chefs get what they need when they need it for over 200 years. Trusting FultonFishMarket.com means their experts work tirelessly to make your day run smoothly. Let your cooking skills shine and elevate your dishes with amazing seafood from FultonFishMarket.com.
Thrills me. So that was my favorite thing I've done. Restaurants just had to get out of my system. I wanted to do it for so long. The first one blew up because a partnership blew up. So before I even put my feet down on the ground, I was building a new one. This time it was me. And it was in Stamford, Connecticut, and it was very personalized to the kind of things that I wanted to have in a restaurant. It was an eclectic bistro kind of fare, so it borrowed from different cultures. Boutique wines, very inexpensive. The place was really cute. My father actually was a partner with me in that restaurant, and we made each other nuts. And I have to tell you, my father and I were very close. Losing him really has left a hole in my life, but we made each other crazy. He was best in the beginning when we were plotting it, and at the end when we were trying to figure out how to escape. But he had been in the advertising business for many years, and he missed action. So he loved being part of this restaurant, and he loved going next door to the bagel shop and shooting the shit about the Mets with them, and they'd give him a free bagel and coffee. He loved talking to people. He loved schmoozing, and again, made me nuts. I was like, get out of my... But I'm so happy that he had that time. And maybe my mother wasn't thrilled, but that he was out doing this so much. But I'm so happy that he had that opportunity and that we lost that money together. So I was so relieved when it was over, though. Restaurant was not the thing. Looking back at that Martha job was a great job. And again, they fit certain times of my life. It was great for a single mom with two kids. Private chef worked for me. Like I said, I worked after Martha and before I built my first restaurant for the Levinsons. Went back to them later. At one point I had downtime, so I worked for a family in Greenwich. I said, this is temporary. I'm only going to be here till my restaurant's open. And I did it. They actually wanted me to stay, but nope, I was back in the restaurant. So that's where it came up again. I thought, well, if I find the right family, because my last experience with private chef had been maybe about 10 years ago or so, and a bad one, not on my resume, a bad one. I lasted maybe a month there, and that was a real, one of those that it was a bad one, put it that way.
Those are part of the longer we are in the game, we all have our, not putting it on the resume kind of family. Right.
Exactly. But it's given me good stories. I mean, I think I really hit my limit there when they also had a Hampton's house. And I don't know, she's a crazy lady wanted us. We'd stop at Lobel's. We'd be in the SUV being driven up there. We'd stop at Lobel's to get all the fancy meat. We'd stop. I forgot where to get the caviar. And then I had to hold the caviar on my lap in a little, thermal, pack of some kind. I hold it right on my lap. And if the caviar was like 2 days old, get rid of it. And of course, caviar is still pretty damn good, after 2 days. And I take it home. I'm like to my daughter, you ever had caviar? Take this, enjoy it. I put it on a pizza. I'm like, I'll eat this. But anyway, we went to the Hamptons, and she had a very well-known writer over for dinner. So she and her husband and this writer and his wife or whatever, they get plastered. And I'm in the kitchen stressing, doing this menu, this crazy menu she wants. And then she decides she's going to grill the steak. So she and the famous writer, both drunk, are out there grilling these steaks, and they just overcook them. So anyway, we get through that dinner, and the next day, there's going to be a luncheon, and she has a guy who works for her as a consultant he was a sommelier at, Danielle, I believe. So he would come in, and first of all, I got a real kick because, she always had truffles in a little shaver, and I was serving, there was pasta. She goes, oh, would you like to have some pasta? Would you like to have truffles on that? And he says, oh, I have that all the time at work. I'm fine. No, that's okay. So you and your truffles. He doesn't give a shit. He's not impressed. And then finally, okay, so she wanted me to serve the steak from the night before, the one that she hammered. And then it was, she wanted me to warm it up. So she's out there with the sommelier and whoever else, a few people. And I serve this. And this steak is disgusting. It's reheated now after being hammered on the grill the night before. And so she starts laying into me in front of the other people about how this is what we've done. And, that's where it's like, it's one thing if she's going to do it, but here's somebody in my industry and somebody who I have respect for, somebody in the big leagues. No. That doesn't fly. So, we parted mutually a couple of days later. That just hit me in a very bad place. And now being more mature and being able to, not being desperate, and really just going with what feels right to me. You can criticize, you can critique. I'm fine. I have no ego when it comes to this. I'm here to serve you, but you have to treat me with respect. I'm respectful to you. You are respectful to me. I felt that way in teaching, and I brought that into my job now. Tell me, this is not art. This is a service I give to you to make you happy. So just tell me, but don't be a shithead and yell at me in front of the sommelier. When you cook that steak, you burn that steak, not me.
Yeah, and I very much agree with you. Even if there's nobody, don't scream at me, man. You can talk to me normally. Yeah. I take all the feedback, but don't talk to me like I'm one of your 5-year-olds that you take it out on.
Yeah, right. And there are those out there, and those are the ones I'm not going to work for anymore. I feel very fortunate. I'm, the client I've had for a while now, and my new client, I feel lucky, and I feel like I'm in a good place right now, and it works for me. They're easy to get to. The Hamptons is the Hamptons, and that's just, for those who don't know, it's like 100 miles away, but it takes hours and hours to get there, and the traffic is always terrible. And do you know what the trade brigade is? Have you ever heard that expression?
Oh, yeah, in the morning. Yeah, I got stuck on it a couple of times too myself.
Yeah, the trade brigade is where the highway narrows down to the 2 lanes that go through the traffic lights, and all these people in the morning, the pool cleaners, the carpenters, the landscapers, the chefs, we're all going to service our clients out there. And so it creates the trade brigade, and it makes this traffic jam. So that's inconvenient, but gotta go where the work is. And,
this summer I really leveraged the train. I love the trains because they compared to the bus and the car, they pretty much stick to schedule. Might get a bit busy sometimes, but I do like the Long Island Railroad in that regard.
Yeah, that's true. Although, I do shopping on my way up there, and I can also leave as soon as I'm done. I don't have to wait for a train,
Yeah, true.
In the car, and I am out.
It sounds like you're counting the minutes. You're like, okay, I'm out. Drop the mic or the apron rather, and then you're like,
exactly.
I'm back home.
Drop the mic.
Home sweet home.
My work is done. They're all eating. They're all happy. Okay, get in the car and go home. And it's great. Tomorrow I'm leaving early in the morning and go do my thing in the Hamptons 2 days, and then on Friday I'm having to sleep over with my granddaughter. Life is good.
Nice.
That's what's important.
I find it so interesting to speak to people at different stages of their career. Like, I'm contemplating things that you've brought up here now. Where do you want to place your time? What is important to you? And then there's people who are just coming in, and they're actually just trying to find their first clients, trying to make a mark in the industry, trying to make a name for themselves. So they have the kind of opportunities that you have, where like, even if there's a bad client, I don't need to be worried because I know I can find a different client. And that's kind of I call it be your own rainmaker. You have to make yourself good enough, well enough known that you're not scared of one bad relationship where it might not be your fault or it might be your fault, but still,
right.
You can get over that. So what would your, having so much experience with so many different people, what would your recommendation be for somebody who is just getting into it and is so scared to, the way you said it earlier, like maybe even fuck up?
Yeah, I think because it's hard. It's one of those where you need to be experienced to get the job, but how do you get experience so you can get the job? I mean, I think the catering is one good entree because you meet people out there and you might strike up a conversation with the client who might want to get you in to do other things if they're particularly impressed with you. I mean, I think that's really what happened with us in the Levinsons in Connecticut. If you have like a little group of people you work with, it's kind of connections and word of mouth. There are agencies, and agencies are, I mean, I've done some tastings through agencies and, trials, but I've never actually gotten a job through an agency. But I mean, the advantage is that they can publicize you and they can get your resume to people, and you don't pay for it. The client pays for it. But it's really kind of a word of mouth thing, I think. Assist people, it's tricky. And also you can't have, you have to have a pretty clean background. These are very wealthy people. And if you have any kind of, record of any kind, you're not going to be able to go into that business. Whereas one of the things I love about culinary is we don't care if you've been in jail, show up, do the job, be responsible, work hard. That's okay. But in a private home, it's a different set of rules. So it's tricky. Just, there are these private personal chef services. And I guess that's another way you can kind of get your foot in the door is to do those. You're working for somebody else and you're usually doing their menus, but you're getting a little bit of experience of working in private homes. So that's probably another good way to go. But I do think that connections, networking is one of the strongest ways. It's tricky. Like I said, you have to have experience, but you have to get experience. So, it's hard.
I love what you said about that. In the culinary world, we don't care, whether you've been to jail or not. And I remember when I went to culinary school in Germany, I felt like I was one of the few people that actually wanted to become a chef. And the majority of the people in my class, I felt like they just didn't get another job. Like it was like the last job available to them or something. It's like, become a cook, that kind of thing.
Yep.
But then
I had a very similar experience. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Margot.
I was just going to say it was very similar for me at Peter Kump all those years ago because I really wanted to be in a commercial kitchen and everybody else was thinking, I'd like to be on food TV. I'm going to be a food writer. One guy was a rich guy, or he had a rich wife who kind of just wanted him to be busy. I was one of the few people who really wanted to get in there and face the heat. So I'm sorry. Yeah. Continue.
No worries. And then as I progressed, I realized what you also said is it's actually more important that you want it, that you want to do it than where you came from. Like there were so many people that I met over the years who might have been in jail or had all kinds of odd ways of life before. But if they were willing, there was usually a mentor for them in the kitchen, because the one thing that's being rewarded more than anything is just willingness and wanting to grow and actually learn and show up and do the work. And I still think that's true today, where I think if I were to arrive, whether it's in Europe or I come to the United States, there is opportunity in that. Like this, I think the notion of being a dishwasher to become a millionaire is still true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that as a chef and other chefs I know don't necessarily think culinary school is that important in that so much of the skill you're going to learn. People who think they come out of culinary schools and are chefs when they walk out the door are not. I mean, I was one of those kids too. I didn't have kids, 35, but a lot of chefs are fine with training on the job. A piece of paper doesn't mean that you were good at it. A piece of paper means you were able to pay 50 grand or whatever, and you went and you got some nice cute knives and all that. And some of those people you see, they're very hungry and they are willing to work. Other people, I mean, I have to tell you, I struggled, and this was back at the Star, a young woman who did not want to take off her extensions of her nails and did not want to take off her false eyelashes. And I mean, enough warnings. You can't be in the kitchen with that. She clearly didn't want to be there. I don't want to hire anybody that doesn't want to be there. I want to hire somebody who's really interested and creative and hungry. And they have to learn, though, also, you know, this is chefs don't want your ideas when you are just coming out of culinary school. We want you to show up. We want you to be on time. We want you to be respectful. We want you to learn, to listen. We don't want your ideas. That was all fine in culinary school, but it's not your time yet.
See, I think ideas are only valued when you showed up first. Like, you know, you have to kind of earn that position to be able to speak up. Like, because otherwise, the reality is there's hundreds of kids going through the kitchen over the couple of years, and everybody throws in their random ideas. And I mean, some of them might even be good, but the reality is you don't know and you don't listen until they've kind of proven themselves. Right.
You need to earn your place in the kitchen. You know, you need, and coming up, sometimes I was the only woman in a kitchen. I wasn't a kid. So it was kind of this oddball in that, you know, this Fairfield County divorcee with the, you know, in there. But, you know, I knew when to keep my mouth shut. I said, yes, chef. I was on time. My uniform was clean and I did whatever they wanted me to do and followed the rules and listened and, you know, earned people's respect. And that's what it was all about. And I'm very disciplined in that way. I'm going to be 64 next month and I still can work 12 hours on my feet. I don't sit down all day. I don't sit down and take a break. That's just the way I've always worked. I'm one of those chefs still can eat a plate over the garbage pail, you know, because I'm busy and, you know, it's terrible. But, you know, that's who I am. It's not going to change now. But I'm proud of the fact that I can still do that. I mean, I'm crippled when I get home, but I will work 12 hours, sleep overnight. I'm back in the kitchen 7 in the morning and I'll stay another 12 hours or whenever they need me. That's how I roll. And I've had students that were way younger than me that were like, oh, chef, can't I sit down? And no, where are you going to work that you can just sit down because you're tired? It doesn't work that way. And I know that, you know, there's a big change in kitchens and a lot of the kind of jokes we used to throw around you can't do anymore. And I know that people have to have a safe space and all this kind of stuff. But ultimately, I still think you just have to stay on your feet and work and just put up with the crap. And, you know, if you work hard enough, like you said, you get someplace. It's not an easy road, but you can do it. And like I said, that's still how I roll, you know.
I think it's fair to say that if somebody cannot stand 12 hours a day in their young years, they have no place being in the private chef world.
In any chef world. But yeah, private chef.
I don't know, maybe in some hotel, in some union, maybe they get away with that.
Exactly. The union, okay, it's time for me to go sit down. Yeah, I take a break. But no, private, and that's one of the reasons I don't want to do it full time, because full time is really tough. You can make a lot of money. That is true. But my short experiences with full time, no. Even if I'm in love with my client, that's not the life I want to have. So at this stage, if I can support myself on, you know, just working part time, that's the way I want to roll. And, you know, like I said, not a kid, definitely not a kid now. I want to hold on to this. I'd like to ride these clients till I can't stand up in that kitchen anymore. You know, when it's time, when I really can't get up out of the chair, that, you know, this is where I want to be. I'm doing what I want to do, that I can have my life.
So do they have a second chef that covers the rest of the week? Or
sorry?
Do they have a second chef that covers the rest of the week for them?
No. These are more the kind of situations where I cook for them when I'm there and then I make food to freeze that they can use other days. Or I set up salad greens and make vinaigrette that's there. You know, these people go out a lot. But it's basically about having some healthy prepared food for their kids. So they can eat as a family and not deal with food if they're all working or busy. So yeah, it's that kind of thing. There's no other chef. And if there's something entertaining or something, I'm down. I'll do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Are you still full time? Are you still? What is your deal with the private chef?
What you touched up earlier, I was pretty full time until when my dad's chemo was coming into the picture, and I asked them to, because the chemotherapy is in Germany, so I asked them to reduce my time, so I only cook for them on the weekends. But they were like, no, man, we want you to be here the whole week, and we're not going to have you fly round trip every week. So you just have to go. And I'm like, okay.
Sorry. Well, we also learn when these things kind of happen to us, who's really there for you and who is not.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a non-negotiable. Like, they were like, hey, if you want to stay working with us, you have to, you cannot do that. And I was like, well, I need to do that because it's my dad and I don't know what's happening here. And so I put my foot down and they put their foot down, and that was fine, And I actually had this job through an agent, and the agent was like, Hannes, it's the right thing to do. Like, go home, be there, and
absolutely.
But from the other side, and I did feel really bad about it when it happened. I was like, because I wanted, I've worked with them for years, and I wanted to keep working with them, but it came down kind of oddly, and I was like, yeah. But now with some distance, I'm like, okay, it's okay, lesson learned. But I also know that I'm in the right place by caring for my dad.
100%. Absolutely. That's not one of those things that you won't regret that years down the road. Oh God, I should have been in that kitchen cooking for them. No.
Yeah. I think that will never be part of I will never think that, like.
Yeah. No, you have to do the right thing. I don't know. With age comes wisdom, I hope. But I do feel I've made some good choices in the last few years. And and the loss of ambition was one of the best things that could happen to me. Don't care. I just want to be the best I am and cook the best food I can for people who appreciate it and get paid for it.
But I think, like being the best we can, I think that in itself is beautiful. Everything else, that's fine, Sometimes I wonder where this whole game of ambition comes in anyway. Like, going out there, trying to seize the world, whatever that even means. Like, if it really boils down to it, at the end of, nobody really cares what we've achieved in our life. And we don't even care that much when we're actually facing death.
Yeah. I don't know. Society pushes us to the world is very competitive, and, everything is on social media about, everybody's fabulous life and certain kinds of, like I was talking about, corporate structures where you are constantly being put up against other people and it's not healthy for us. And, the things I wanted before are absolutely no interest in them anymore. No interest. For here and there, if I've had to help somebody out in a restaurant for a day or something, it's fun. It's fun to go back there and do that, but never doing that again. I am happy to be in a home. And you know what else? My knife skills got good. It was funny because I would teach knife skills class, and actually my knife skills kind of sucked because I was so out of practice, but they're good now, and all the technique that I was teaching in classes, I'm really using again now. And that's pretty great. And all that rhythm, like I said, all the rhythm of setting up your mise en place and getting your salt together and setting up your whole station and going through your list. That was so therapeutic for me during those really dark days. It's familiar, and it's taking your mind into something, doing something and taking it away from pain. And very glad that I had that too during those days.
To some degree, that's how I feel these days about having the podcast, because I schedule the podcast recordings usually after dinner when my dad anyway sleeps. And then I kind of take the head off from everything that's going on there, which is unpredictable and, you know, seems so scary. And I go into something where I'm still creating and I'm kind of shifting mindset for some time at least, you know, till I wake up again and go back to what has to be done.
That's right. That's exactly right. You're doing something that's creative and satisfying, but you also have to focus on it and you have to make sure it's right. And you've got to reach out to people to bring them on and all the other things that you're doing. I saw you had the trip to the, is it Fulton Fish Market?
Fulton Fish Market, yeah.
Yeah, right. So, and that gets you away from, not gets you away from, but it gives you something else to take you out of your head a little bit when there's something like this going on with your father. And I get it. So it's been, you know, it was a very good choice at this time in life. And this sounds like it is for you. You know, you're younger than me. I don't know where you're going to be going to next, but it sounds like you really did the right thing at this time. You know, it comes down to it. It really comes down to it, where all this horror was going on here in New York. What's most important is, you know, the people you love, having those you love and knowing who they are and shedding the things that aren't important. You know, very empowering and brought me to where, you know, I am today. Like I said, I still feel their loss all the time. My granddaughter didn't replace them, but she added to my life, you know, and the things I'm doing now, writing I'm doing, it adds to my life. And being a private chef really is able to facilitate all those things. Yeah. And I'm a grown up now, and I have a good attitude, and I take anything they throw at me, I catch it and I do it, and I'll do that as long as I can. You know, like I said, you know, when I can't do those 12-hour days anymore. You know, I think I still got some time.
I still got some juice left.
Yeah.
Well, Margot, thank you very much. This was very heartfelt and, you know, also diverse conversation from so many different aspects that you lived through. So thank you so much for sharing your decades of experience with us.
Thank you for the opportunity, Hannes. I enjoyed it. And I really wish the best for your father and your family. And thank you. That's all I can say.
We'd like to thank our sponsor, FultonFishMarket.com, the best seafood in the nation, trusted by the best chefs in the world. Aside from offering premium seafood, they also make life easier for you by delivering all these outstanding products right to your doorstep. Visit the official website www.fultonfishmarket.com and explore the incredible selection of seafood and let your clients experience quality that has captivated palates for generations. Use code PRIVATECHEF at checkout to get 15% of your first order. When it comes to seafood, FultonFishMarket.com is the name we trust. Thank you for joining us at the Private Chef podcast. If you know any highly skilled chefs that want to take their life to the next level, make sure to share this podcast with them. And if you enjoyed this episode, click subscribe and check out our upcoming episodes. Thank you for listening.